few offences are there. But once this Companies Act 2013 comes into effect, almost 90% of the sections will be having more than 10 years imprisonment. How it happens? By virtue of section 447, which defines about fraud, by virtue of section 448, which defines that any return, any report, anything filed by any person, they are subjected to the provision of the 447, which defines fraud, whereby they are subject to the imprisonment of 10 years and above. How could section 448, any return, is covered? If you see the provision of section 211, which says, which lists out the provisions, what are all coming under the purview of the section 447. In fact, in that provision of section 448 also has been brought under section 211, whereby almost 90% of the Companies Act is going to be subject to the provision of section 447, and the corporate or directors or professionals will be subjected to the imprisonment of more than 10 years, where the limitation won't be applicable for a department to take action. Anytime they can step in, even after 20 years also, and wake up us and say that, even after retirement also, say that no, something 20 years back your son done some offense which is more than 10 years, punishment is, it deserve punishment more than 10 years, and now we have authority to wake up you and bring back to the inquiry. So this is going to be the scenario where we are sitting. So it's not that we can lightly take it up. I will quickly run through. I trust most of us must be aware of the basic privilege that as of now available under the 1956 Act. I will quickly take you through what are those privileges, and I will take you through what are the changes or what are taken away from the private companies. In fact, rather than I am running the slides, I can take a few seconds and say that almost all privileges of the private company is taken away. So, just to understand what are those privileges have been taken away for private companies and now made applicable to a public company, just to understand alone, we have to see what are the privileges already been given under the old Act. And those privileges are not available under the new Companies Act to the private companies. In fact, under the new Companies Act 2013, there is no distinction between the private company, public company, rather I should say. This let us register in our mind. There is no point of again we are feeling so privileged that we are having only a private company and we are only husband and wife and son and father, that we are privileged to have any kind of transaction and pass any kind of resolution and deal with the corporate or society the manner I wish to. No. All gone, all is going to go away once the Companies Act 2013 comes into effect, where completely it is taken away all the privileges that is available to the private company, which I will take you through. These are the flow of presentation which I am planning to take you quickly. Probably almost 10 years is over, 10 minutes got over in 20 minutes. I will see I am doing the justice by taking through quickly to all those provisions. And as you know, 2 directors and statement of prospectus all are taken away now. I will quickly take you through. Any doubts you can raise in the infraction time. And section 81 is now applicable to private company also. And earlier commencement, certificate of getting commencement is only applicable to public company. Now it is applicable to private company also. Now we have to ensure that not only we are taking the certificate of incorporation, we also ensure that money is coming from the shareholder. We are filing the relevant form and also taking the commencement of business from the registrar of companies to kickstart the business by private company. Here the problem is, as of under old Act, just we incorporate a private company, immediately we sign agreement. Even the same day of incorporation, we sign a joint venture agreement. We open a bank account. It can't happen in the new Act. The new Act makes it very clear, commencement is mandatory to all companies. So without taking commencement, no resolution can be passed, no bank account can be opened, no agreement can be signed. This is going to be a situation where even husband and wife or father son company also, which is deemed as a private company. And as I told you, the 2% of course that got not changed. And 171 to 186, this is the, rather I should say, it's a gift to the private companies under the old Act 1956. In fact, under old Act 1956, where the private company was completely permitted to have any kind of share capital. In fact, they can have any kind of share capital, they can have any kind of characters that they can give associated with the capital, all this taken away. In fact, the issue of shares with the different voting rates and dividend, all that earlier were not applicable to the private company. Now everything is applicable to the private company. So now we can't take privilege that as a private company I can issue any kind of capital, nothing doing. We have to issue the same kind of capital which a public company is also permitted to issue. So in this front, both private and public, there is no going to be any difference under the new act. And 2 director, of course, there is no change. Maximum alone got increased from 12 to 15. Minimum, there is no change. And 266 consent, of course, I remember senior members must be aware of it. 13 years back, it was mandatory for filing a consent where we used to file Form 29 for public company. That too, it was applicable only to the public company, not to the private company. Now, in the new act, they brought the consent by director to all companies. Even now, it is not that sufficient that we file Form 32 under old act and make director to act as a director. No. Now nothing doing. Now in the new act, the company necessarily has to file a consent of director, then intimate the appointment of director. And again, section 77, earlier there was an exemption given to private company. Now everything is applicable to private and public. And section 85, where it depends on capital and equity. In fact, here alone it was given exemption to private company where I had a liberty to have any kind of capital. In fact, I can even call it a different kind of capital also. I need not to say equity preference also, as for the old Act 1956. I can call it any name which I can, because the section permits me to have any kind of capital, any nature of capital. Now all is going done away under the new Act. Once become effective, then we have to completely tune ourselves to the requirement of the new act, which has to be followed by a public company, same has to be followed by private company also. And disproportionate voting right and fixing all this now is going to be applicable to private company. We will see what are those exactly the provisions that are applicable. And 198, of course, this is the only provision which a same exemption is given to the private company under the new act, where they can give a remuneration. Any remuneration, rather I should say, where the public company alone is prohibited to give a remuneration except otherwise provided under the new act. And as I told you, now 12 become 15 under the new act, irrespective of private and public. Enough, Dr. Ravi explained about it. And 264, as I told you, filing of consent, now it is going to be applicable to all company. And all this exemption is already given to under private company, now going to be applicable to public company. Earlier under section 192, form 23 has to be filed for all special resolution and all resolution that is passed under section 293, 1A, 1D. Now those sections were not applicable in 1956 Act. Now all those section equivalent provision has come, section 180 under the new Act 2013, where all this transaction we necessarily has to file a form, and without special resolution no business can be exercised under section 180, which is now applicable to private company also. Earlier private company was exempted from all these parameters. And there is not much change in the directorship. Yeah, I will take you to the comparison now. What is the difference between the 1956 Act and 2013? As I told you, earlier the number was restricted up to 50. Now the number is 200. And now commencement, as I told you, now it is required for public company, private company both. And preferential allotment, now all is going to applicable to private company. In fact, we are going to deal with a scenario where even a private company, even a family run company also, to come out with a offer document to issue shares for them. In fact, as long as it is a further share, in fact that cannot be issued without letter of offer. This is going to be under the new act. As of now, how it is happening? In fact, resolution is passed at the convenience of the director, but as long as the money hit the bank account and share certificate is issued and form 2 is filed with the registrar of companies, now in the new act this will not be a scenario, and the new act there necessarily be a offer document should be filed, even if it is to the own directors or shareholders, even if it's a family run also. So without a previous offer document, no previous placement can take place, even if it is a private company. the whole which I want to communicate here is, there is no difference in issue of shares also for private company and public company. In fact, now if you see, there's an ocean difference between the private company and public company under the old Act 1956, where the private company is completely at liberty to issue any shares, even issue of shares also and filing of form also. But under new Act, all those privileges, liberties are taken away. Whatever needs to be followed by public company needs to be followed by private company, and without letter of offer, no allotment can take place, both for private company and public company. And of course, all this restriction, earlier the private company was permitted to take, they can borrow from members, directors and directors' relatives. Now that portion is removed from the enactment and the new enactment. Now directors' relatives are prohibited to offer loan to the company. Now still member and directors are permitted to provide loan to the company. That too after following a procedure prescribed. That the big list is there where we have to give a paper advertisement and we have to file the form. All those complaints, after those complaints, members and directors alone permitted, and director's relative is not permitted under new Act 2013. And differential voting right, as I told you, earlier it was not applicable to private company. Now it is applicable to both private and public. We can't think about issuing our differential voting rights the way we want to issue without following the rules prescribed. And same way 269 and 383, now completely they made it as a key managerial person, 203. In fact, enough deliberated in the morning about KMP. Now the whole qualification is prescribed for managing director, but there is no qualification prescribed for CEO or CFO. So I can run my board without even educated people also completely. Of course, company secretary by default should be a member of the institute, but there is no qualification prescribed for CEO, CFO and managing director. Of course, there is some qualification prescribed where there is equivalent schedule for Schedule 13 and the old Act. So that too, there is no education qualification prescribed. Only the qualification, disqualification in terms of conviction and other parameters only is prescribed, not education qualification. So even I can have my KMP, I can design my architecture, my KMP in the company without any educated person, except the company secretary who will be the educated fellow in the company. Suppose the board prefers. In case board prefers, if the board prefers everyone should be educated, then sky is the limit. And one more important difference here is section 269, which mandates public company and private company, which is a subsidiary of public company, to have a managing director or manager or whole-time director. That was applicable only to public company. Now the whole KMP is applicable not only to the public company, also to private company. By this, they are making even private company also having a capital of 5 crores to have all list of persons 1, 2, 3, 4. And loan, in fact, the whole day also we can debate. Of course, 3 circulars so far has come to clarify something from ministry side. I don't know what it has clarified. We have not got clarified anything out of those circulars. And without those circulars also, situation is not altered in any manner. Even you can just ignore those 3 circulars and you can simply read section 185. What 185 contemplates, same thing without any influence with the circular. The circular has not influenced the provisions of the section 185. Need not to worry too much. It's my personal view. How much I read also, it is not conveying anything afresh which is already there in the section, and very clear in the section itself that they come out in the form of circular, which is not required. Now a private company is prohibited to give loan. Early under section 295, only the public companies are prohibited to offer loan to its director. Of course, with central government permission they can offer, but they were exempted at least subsidiary under section 295 and the old Act. Now nothing doing, they plugged the whole thing. The whole idea is that they don't want to encourage private company. The whole idea of government is, I don't want a private public company, and I want only 2 distinctions. One is listed company, other is unlisted company. A listed company, of course, SEBI also should give a blessing for so many other things, and of course he is there to take the responsibility. Something went wrong like a Sahara, Satyam, where SEBI also will be pulled to take responsibility for listed company. For unlisted company, of course, as a MCA, we are collecting fees from you, we will take responsibility. This is the attitude of the ministry. The ministry In fact, they never want to have a segment called private company in the new act at all. But suddenly if you scrap the whole provision of private company, then whole confusion will take place in the corporate world. That's the reason they not remove the nomenclature or nature of the private company under the new act. They only made all provisions which are applicable to public company is applicable to private company also. So that without touching the character or without removing any nomenclature in the old act, they made all the provisions of the public company is applicable to private company also. So now directors are completely prohibited, and the director interested, in fact a list is going: director, director relative, partner, where director is a partner, and the private company where director is a director member. Of course we know the whole list how it appears in 295. It's just a copy paste. In fact they could have copy pasted the entire thing so that subsidiary also would have got exempted, but very cleverly they copy pasted only the first 5 line items where to define the interested person. So other things they completely ignored, and simply they one word only, no loan. They made it like a FEMA, in fact policy law, where all policy law for this matter, whether it is a finance act or any EXIM or FEMA, any law for this matter, unless it is told, it is prohibited. That's what. In fact, slowly the Companies Act, one side it is it's made as a criminal law, other side it's made as a policy law, where nothing I told, then you are not permitted. Earlier we were interpreting the Companies Act 1956 that something is not told is permitted for me to do. Now the whole scenario, the whole perception should have a shifting where something is not told is not permitted now. With this understanding only, the whole provision of Companies Act 2013 has to be approached. If you fail to approach, then the consequences is anyway there under 447, 448, and always they say that even criminals also nowadays they don't deem it as a fraud, and whatever they do it's an offense. Offense under the General Class Act or IPC, it is only act which is punishable under the act. That's called offense. Even there also they never say fraud. But in the Companies Act, even there is no terminology called offense. Whatever a professional or director does, it is directly fraud only, not even offense. So that level, in fact, rather I should say, criminals are more privileged now after the Companies Act comes, and professionals will be stepping into the shoes of the criminals, and probably they will be preferred more than the professionals for corporate. This is going with the scenario once the entire act become effective. It's not that what I am telling, it's my view. It is only a reflection what is there in the provisions of the new act 2013. And 149, in fact, as I told you that now enough morning, Mr. Dr. V deliberated. Now we need a resident director to be victimized for anything goes wrong. And consent to act as director, as I already told you, it is now mandatory both for private and public company. And earlier we used to pass a resolution 263 proportional representation, where generally a JV company, SPV company used to pass a resolution where by single resolution 2-3 directors also can be appointed. For that we have to pass another resolution anonymously to approve, to allow another resolution to pass 2-3 directors. But now those provisions earlier was applicable only to public company, now it is applicable to all the companies. And now the limit of directorship also got increased. This is the one favorable thing done, but here earlier they were including now not more than 10 public companies a person should be a director. Earlier there was no cap for the directors to be a director in a private company. Now completely cap has come even for private company also. Somebody now who is a director in any company, they should not simply spare private companies from the calculation. They have to now include private company also for the calculation. The overall a person can be a director only in 20 companies, including private, public, or whatever the company it is. And CS